Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Pincus, and I'm the National Careers Professional based in Melbourne, and I'm excited to have you join the College of Law today. Each month we deliver a 1-hour live webinar on various topics designed to help individuals studying law kickstart their careers as they transition into the legal profession. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we are sitting at this time and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome again to our College of Law Careers webinar on the increasingly important and inescapable topic, how to build your professional social media profile. Having a professional presence on social media is important for all of us as law students, as graduates and new lawyers. Why, you may ask? A strong online presence will help you to build professional relationships, explore and find new opportunities, showcase you and your value, and also it's a way of keeping up to date with what's happening in the industry. So I am very excited to be joined today by Guru James Dappershee.
So close, Susan. I'm so sorry.
Oh God, I'm shocking. Who is the director at Chamberlains and also the founder of Coffee and a Case Note. So let me just tell you a little bit about James before we just launch into this. So admitted as a solicitor in 2008, James joined Chamberlains Law Firm in 2020. Litigation forms the backbone of James' practice. However, these days, he finds himself increasingly providing advice on his clients' conduct outside of court. He has acted for private clients, trustees, statutory corporations, unincorporated associations, proprietary companies, directors, shareholders, insurers and businesses in relation to the risks they confront, their rights and their obligations. James' practice principally relates to corporate and commercial work, chiefly shareholders and directors' disputes. James is known by some for using the internet to build his practice via the video project Coffee and a Case Note. There, James summarises a recent piece of corporate and commercial litigation over a cup of coffee in a way that is both rigorous and approachable. I also did some undercover investigation via social media and I discovered your passion as a hip-hop rapper and also your involvement in recording a horror movie podcast called Spooko. So that was fascinating, I must say. Before I pass over to you, James, just a few housekeeping matters. To get the most out of the session, we suggest that you minimise distractions, so maybe put away your phone and turn off your emails. We've allocated 15 minutes of questions at the end of the session. However, you are welcome to enter your questions via the chat function or Q&A right throughout the session. So James is very, very happy to taking your questions in the moment. And we'll record all our webinars. So we'll share the recording of the session via email in the next week or so. And there you'll be also asked to complete a quick survey on the session and any ideas that you may have for future webinars. So let's get over to you, James. Enough about me, enough of me, and over to you.
Oh, Susan, that's a generous intro. Thank you. And I'm so sorry for having one of the more fiddly surnames in the game. It tends to come with the territory. Really appreciate the chance to speak with you and to speak with everyone here. Can I just repeat Susan's generous and constructive invitation? If you've got questions, if you've got comments, that's completely fine. Susan and I together will try to sort of engage and go toe to toe with those as we work through the talk. So do feel free to, I don't know if we're inviting people to turn their mics on, Susan, but perhaps that's an invitation to a riot. But certainly ping a question in the chat, ping a question in the Q&A.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it works. I think that everyone would probably most likely be muted.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
But people
shows.
so they just put their questions into the chat, but you can't actually hear them speak. Yeah.
Great. So please do that if you'd like, and please feel free to do that whenever you'd like. Essentially, I've just got a bit of a broad structure of a chat. I've got some PowerPoint slides that I have not reviewed closely and had an edit of, so we'll find a typo or two in there. But aside from a couple of typos, hopefully what we'll have today is a little bit of value. So I might get to sharing my screen and we might get started on today's discussion. So hi there. I am a litigator based here in New South Wales. Commercial work, corporate work is what I do. And the way I market my practice and bring work in through the door, aside from the existing relationships I have, is I use a project called Coffee and a Case Note. Some of you might have heard of this. A large number of you will not have heard of it before. And we're going to dive into the role it's had in building my practice and why my experience with that project might assist us in talking about you and you building your career. So that is the plan. The plan also includes this slide moving along. Great. So, we've got a typo straight away. That's great. The first point we're going to discuss is lawyers and branding. We're going to get into the role that branding, potentially an ugly word, has to play in the way you build your career and other lawyers build theirs. We're going to talk about the approach I've employed, and we're going to talk about a potential approach for you. There also should be a possessive apostrophe in today's, of course, in the heading, and probably a lowercase d. And if you're getting the impression that I didn't draft this and just pinged off a few text messages to our marketing team, you might be near the mark. And I see we have a question. What is the challenges, asks Tao, if any, to the market? Sorry, answer live. Here we go. I think I might display it on the screen. What is the challenges, if any, to market the legal service through online profile to attract old school clients? Yes, this is a good question. If we are looking for old school clients, how do we use the new school method of the internet to engage with them? The answer is maybe we don't. So there are going to be some clients who are in their early 70s, in their late 80s, who are not going to be interested in the content you're sharing on TikTok, and you're not going to reach them that way. But there are also going to be clients who you're going to reach by way of referral sources. So you might reach an accountant or a financial advisor in their mid-40s, and they might have an old school client, as we define them, who they're going to refer work onto. That's certainly been my experience. And we're going to get into the techniques and strategies that you might like to use in doing that. Just before we do that, we've got an entry made in the chat. Appreciate the live slide correction, Daniel. I appreciate your comment. So that's good fun. I also don't like this font. So the live slide correction is going well. Here we go. What I say is that our clients aren't moving online. So we're not in the process of the internet taking an increasing role in, the way we do business in our lives and that sort of thing. I say it's happened. I say it's over. I say the horse has bolted. And so we are now in a position where, with the bolted horse, this is true whether you like social media, whether you get social media or not. I'm sorry, this is the scenario in which we find ourselves. And you can often find yourself caught in something of a mindset when a new, site becomes popular and you go, ugh, do I really have to spend time engaging with this site that I don't get or I don't like, or whatever it might be? And the answer is, no, you don't. But if you want to speak to your clients, they may well be there. And so it's important to you as you build your practice to go and engage with it. And I said, I've got another comment in the chat. Tony, who I know well. Tony, hello. Tony says, some law practices publish articles on their website. Some post videos such as Coffee and a Case Note. Do these contribute to CPD? Now, the CPD regime is something Susan can comment on better than I, but in New South Wales, it's a self-reporting regime. So, Tony, if you're practicing in New South Wales, my answer to that is go and do your own research on that. I'm not going to give you advice on it, but I'll tap my nose while I do it. Tony, how's that? So as we are thinking about where our potential clients might be, our potential referrers might be, we're also thinking about what sort of strategies we're going to employ and how we are going to engage with them. And just to think thematically about what we're trying to do when we're engaging with clients, our aim is to become known, it's to become liked, and it's to become trusted. And we're going to dive into each of these as we go. So look, the contemporary internet allows us all sorts of new ways to become known, to become liked, and to become trusted by our potential client base. And so if you can see me just glancing off, when I share a screen, I don't have a sense of time. So I just don't want to make sure that I'm putting us in a good position as we go on. So I'll just get my watch rolling. But the contemporary internet allows us to do this. And the strategies that might have served us well, or our predecessors well in previous years, of your golf days or your quarterly beers to catch up or your tickets to the cricket or whatever it might be, that's all fine so far as it goes. But what I say is that the contemporary internet allows you more flexibility and more scope to go about marketing and building your practice your way. And there are new ways to become known, liked, and trusted that we can explore. So before we move on, I want to linger on these 3 points. Then we're going to move on to talking about what I'm trying to do, because by talking about what I'm trying to do, hopefully we give you a bit of access in what you might like to try to do as you build your career. So let's start with this known, liked, trusted triptych. Right, step 1 is known, and known is a numbers game. And in essence, people can't send you work unless they know that you exist. And so it's a complete threshold question. So in order for work to be sent to you, in order for a client to become a client of yours or a client of your firm's, the client must know that you exist. And so that's going to be one of our goals that we're going to get into as we discuss this. Now, the second element in becoming someone who your client sends work to is to be liked, right? And when I say liked, it need not necessarily be someone who wants to be best friends with you, but it must be someone who finds you sufficiently likable to have a desire to spend time with you outside of the hours they normally would, and to want to spend time with you as you give them advice on what might be a pretty challenging phase in their lives. And step 3 is to become trusted. And when we say trusted, this is not a case of interpersonal trust where I might lend you money and expect to be repaid or something like that. This is trusted to execute your professional skills at an appropriate level. So let's say a law graduate might want to become trusted as they share content about learning how a building and construction firm goes about doing their work. Or a law student might want to become trusted about the tips they share for how they go about their studies. Or a wills and estates practitioner might want to become trusted in knowing how to draft a watertight testamentary trust, or whatever it might be. Apologies for using the word trust in 2 different ways in the same sentence. So let's anchor our thoughts this afternoon, in wanting to become known. That's a numbers game. People can't send work to people they don't know. To become liked, and that's a 50-50 game. So remember that not everyone's going to like you, and a lot of people aren't. And that's true for all of us. And so we find ourselves in a position where if we're going to solve this liked question, the best way I suggest you do that online is authenticity, but we'll come to that later. And then 3, trusted. It is being trusted to execute your professional skills at the appropriate level. So if you're a graduate, you're not expected to execute your professional skills at the level of a 15-year veteran. If you're a 15-year veteran, you're not expected to execute the skills required of an up-and-coming whippersnapper in third year of law school trying to make their way through. So it's about being trusted at an appropriate level. We'll come to how they work. I've got a couple of questions here that I'll endeavour to address as we go. Anonymous attendee, which is a great catchy name, asks, will this webinar be available online later? Yes. Susan, if I get a nod from you, I think that's certainly right.
Yes, it will be sent out to all participants.
Fabulous. Second is a question from Ankit Karanwal. Ankit asks, first off, love the Coffee and Case Notes series. James, please keep it going. I will, Ankit. There's life and all that sort of stuff going on in the background, but yes, I will. And I really appreciate that. What advice would you have for the digital presence of someone who's already got over a decade of unrelated experience in digital marketing and is now moving into law? What do we do with our LinkedIn profile, our web presence, and experience from an unrelated industry in order to get the attention of legal recruiters and that sort of thing? Do we delete and start again, or do we include that experience for the benefit of transferable skills? I don't like to give definite answers, but you keep it, frankly. We have members of our firm who came to the legal profession in their late 30s, early 40s, having done other stuff for any number of years. And there are firms who will say, no, you must be a 22-year-old law graduate with a certain number of marks. And if you're not that, then you're not for our firm. That's fine for them. And there may be cases where, certain experience is not relevant to the skills we're after here at our firm as well. But I think the idea of concealing, not quite concealing, I know that's not what you're suggesting. The idea of minimizing the expertise you have from other facets of your life is one that I would not endorse, because there are going to be people who say, no, that's not for me. But by the same token, there are going to be people who are pretty excited about the idea of working with someone with the experiences you have. So I'd encourage you to lean into trying to find your people, as it were, by sharing what you've been up to in your previous career rather than hiding it away. That's my suggestion.
I totally agree, James.
Yep. I really appreciate that, Susan. Oh, this is good fun. What a lovely session we're having. I'm having a great time. We have another anonymous question. Everyone's welcome to be anonymous, by the way. But always nice to learn people's names and that sort of thing. Any tips to form a trust relationship where there's a big age difference with older clients? Great question. Not really. The fundamental point I come to with trust is about expertise. So, and I think when you say trust, then I think it's actually the liked question you're referring to, because remember, trust is about expertise. So if you're good enough to do the work, that's trust answered. But if it's older clients who may not like, and speaking in a broad sense, they might not like the idea of someone in their mid-20s doing important legal work for them, if I can sort of redraft your question for you, I hope that's the issue you're referring to. My initial answer is, well, if someone doesn't like you and doesn't like you doing the precise job you're trying to do, they might like you otherwise, then they don't like you. And that's tough. And so you just move on to the next potential client. I'm afraid I don't have a good answer for that. And that's the reason why I look to online marketing, because if you market your practice online, you are seen by a sufficient number of people that people who don't like you, and again, I say like in a broad sense, who are not interested in your personality being the one executing those legal skills, they're not going to approach you. And because you are doing a video that's seen by 10 people, rather than having a coffee with one person, you're going to be able to leverage your efforts at meeting new clients. And so I say, yes, that's a risk that older clients might not be excited about younger lawyers doing their work. That's fine. Let's go to the next client. And I guess that's my broad suggestion on that point. So let us march on to the second sort of element of the talk. And the reason I want to set this out is because I sort of want to invite you to think about what you're trying to do yourself. So I'm not particularly interested in sort of taking you behind the curtain of what I'm up to. It's pretty obvious. I'm a corporate litigator. I've got a team of people here who I need to feed work to. So I need people to send me that work, or they're going to be out of a job. And then if they're out of a job, shortly after that, I'm going to be out of a job. So I need commercial litigation to come in through the door. That's what I'm up to. And we've got another question. I've touched on this a bit, but we're often told to avoid social media as law students and then later as lawyers. Are there obvious pitfalls to avoid for lawyers to using social media platforms in a professional context? Any tips on what lawyers should be doing online? Yes, great question, and it's a genuine issue. The first point is that professionalism and legal practice is not always a dour, hyper-professional, slightly grumpy, stoic set of old white guys sitting together talking to other old white guys about old white guy stuff. So there is scope for you to be playful and colourful and vibrant in the way you practice law. In the same way, there's space for you to be playful, colourful, vibrant in the way you appear online. But the opposite's also true. So let's say you are a dour, grumpy old white guy, and the only content you want to put out is dour old grumpy white guy content, well, there's plenty of space to do that. We're going to come to specific examples later, but dour grumpy old white guys love the AFR. And if you were to put out a tweet with just some very specific subject matter relevant commentary on that, then I think that's pretty relevant to you building your brand and your firm's brand as someone having expertise in that relevant area. So the advice to avoid social media is a risk-averse piece of advice. And I don't have a problem with risk aversion, because you need a bit of an appetite for risk if you're going to tell your staff to go out and start posting on LinkedIn. But I say it's a risk worth embracing. And if people are advising you not to do it, I guess I'd invite you to accept that advice with a little bit of caution and a grain of salt. Unless it's a condition of your employment, in which case, yeah, just do that and don't put your job at risk. But maybe just subtly reach out to some recruiters and think about where your next move might be. Okay, if we're talking about what I'm doing in order to ground ourselves in thinking about what you're going to be doing, basically I'm chasing this corporate litigation work. How am I going to do that? I'm going to build relationships with likely referrers of work, right? And just to take you behind the curtain of how I'm going to build my practice and how it's working now, I could do good work for the directors and shareholders of about 500,000 or 600,000 businesses in Australia, right? So I've got 500,000 or 600,000 potential clients. Now, that is too many for me to be going out and forming relationships with, right? I can't go and make sure I'm best friends with Blogsy Magoo, the concreting firm, because she might be getting into a corporate dispute in 11 years' time. I need to leverage myself better than that. And the way I do it in my practice is I build relationships with those people who we might consider trusted advisors. And I'll go through those in just a moment, but I see we have a question, which I'll turn to. So I recalled ASCR 2015 and barrister rule said practitioner cannot make comment on a live case, say on LinkedIn, for the decision handed down. Do you have any suggestions as to the scope or content we can comment on in relation to some legislation or cases that are on foot? Yeah, contempt of court is very important. You must not engage in contempt of court. And so if we talk about cases that are live, we want to think about reporting, but I think just it's not a great look for lawyers to be commenting publicly about decisions until they're made. So don't engage in contempt of court. Don't breach the relevant rules. Sorry, that's a bit of a threshold question that I guess I should have addressed. Yeah, don't break any of your professional or practice rules. Don't engage in contempt of court. But aside from that, once you've covered that off, you think for yourself about what sort of material you'd like to be publishing. You bear that in mind. And we've got some further questions. Hello there. These are lovely chats about having the presentation emailed on later. That is excellent stuff to hear. Oh, we have another question. No, we don't. We don't. So let us march on. So my goals, let's keep it selfish for the moment, and then we'll turn the focus around, are to build relationships with these trusted advisors. So if we say there are 500,000 or 600,000 or 1 million or whatever potential directors and shareholders out there that I could do good work for, the question is, how am I going to get to them? And the answer I have is through their trusted advisors. And so the relationships I'm looking to build with people who are likely to speak to people like that, and people who are likely to refer work to me based on those trusted advisor relationships they might have with clients. So these are people like the types I've listed here. You've got your financial advisors, your IPs, management consultants, other lawyers. Other lawyers are a very good source of referrals because they're pretty handy at forming a view as to whether you're any good. And if they form a view that you are, then that's someone who they're going to trust a referral with. There are some sort of expert witnesses, that sort of thing, accountants, non-exec directors, those kind of people. So we're trying to build relationships. And how are we doing that using the internet? I'm trying to use the internet to give value without expectation. So not in a transactional way to say, oh, you know, sign up to my newsletter, give me your email address, and so then I'll be able to market to you and it's all going to be very exciting. I'm trying to give value by just publishing and say, look, here's some material, hope it assists, end of sentence. And the analogy stolen from this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, that we can speak about another time, is jab, 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 right hook. And I don't know anything about boxing, but I understand the jab is your little punch that you use to maneuver your person around the boxing ring. And your right hook is the one where you really try to do some damage. And so the analogy to be used here and online is to give, which is to say, attempts to provide some value online, which is what I try to do, and then ask. You don't go, hey, send me all your corporate oppression matters. You might go, hey, could you please consider subscribing to my podcast? Or, hey, do you want to go check out my firm's website to see what I'm after? And it's always an ask. And this is the non-transactional approach that I'm trying to attend to. And if you've been giving at scale, if you make that suggestion to a large range of people, then there's no pressure on one potential relationship. So you might go, well, someone might be turned off if I ask them to refer me some work. Fine. Because you've formed potential relationships with so many, because you've done it at scale, that is a risk that you can wear yourself and go, oh, well, they didn't like my approach there. That's a bit annoying. Oh, well, on to the next one. I say on to the next one, and we have another question. How do you draw the line between what's legal information and what's legal advice when creating online content? There's a bit of a, whatever that US judgment about pornography is, of like, you'll know it when you see it. But essentially, don't give advice. And you know it's advice when you start getting into it being bespoke. So at the moment it's bespoke. That's a pretty big warning, red flag that it's going to be advice. So the moment someone asks you, what about my situation? And you start answering, that's a pretty big warning that do not say that, do not answer that question, do not give that advice. But if we get a little more precise, someone might say, oh, my mum died and left me out of the will, what do I do? Your response might be, well, there's this thing called the family, there are things called family provision claims. And what you might like to do is think about having a look into that. And if you could like to, there are all sorts of different ways that family provision claims work. You got to do A, B, and C. Anyway, always best to think about these things on a case-by-case basis. And if you want to call me up for a free consultation or whatever it might be, you can do that. So it's about being subtle and engaged enough to, what's the appropriate way to put it? To ensure you're not advising, that you're sharing information. And if you're content that you're sharing information, then that is not advice. If you're making a suggestion to someone about what they should do, their legal rights. So you might make a suggestion to say, do some Googling or give me a call. that might be advice, as it were, but it probably wouldn't go to the depths of legal advice. But if you're sharing information about the outcome of the case or the way family provision matters run, then I think that would be appropriate. It's very much going to be a case-by-case, what is pornography sort of question. And we've got a question here from Keshav Unhelkar. Keshav asks, he says a kind compliment at the start, which I appreciate, Keshav, thank you. And what they say is, would you say the advice on socials varies somewhat for those at the dawn of their legal career? Yes, and we'll come to this. My worry is, as we're building a brand prior to being established, early stumbles could be held against us when hiring. And so let's have a chat about what these things look like from the perspective of a student. Now, great question, Keshav, appreciate it. The fact is, I'm not a student and I've never done a social media marketing initiative when I was. I've only ever done it as an old white guy lawyer where we sit at the moment. So if I was a student and was thinking about branding myself, I would not want to brand myself as a subject matter expert. I would want to engage online on the basis that I am a student. And so the sort of approaches I could use would be curiosity, would be something like, whoa, today in torts, we learned all about issue X. Can you believe that something? I didn't know that either. Fascinating. Or like, hey, I'm in my third week of being an employed lawyer. Man, the hours are a bit crazy, but what's really interesting is the dip, and the dip. And like, whew, I was just made associate and it feels like, I only just started law school last week. Here are my thoughts on becoming associate. So if you are calibrating your online content in a way that is authentic, a word that drives me a little bit bonkers, but that is authentic to your actual experience, your 3/4 of the way to making sure that what you're doing is appropriate, and that any potential people who might hire you might say, well, yeah, of course, Keshav had never heard of the tort of conversion on his first week of law school. It's appropriate that he would share content. You know, if he was planning to share content, that's fine that he shared something saying back before he really got into law school, he didn't know what a tort was. That's not going to be a source of embarrassment or risk. So for so long as you stay in your lane, as it were, and you don't reach for expertise you don't have, I think it's perfectly appropriate. I hope that assists. This is interesting. Another good question about concerns you might have for approval or supervision, as well, noting not to share any advice. Look, I might not answer this specifically, but the broad suggestion is, if you are, for example, on LinkedIn and you've got your employer clear in your subject heading, or if you are on a restricted practicing certificate, it's worth bouncing this sort of stuff off your employer and making sure you've got an imprimatur to go about these projects. So I think there is a concern that what you're saying might need approval or supervision, but I'm someone who asks forgiveness rather than permission. And so if you were planning to go ahead anyway, I guess what I'd say is to lean back on that earlier advice and to say, don't be foolish and reach outside your grasp, right? If all you've got is a certain level of knowledge, fine, stay at that level and don't hold yourself out as someone who can comment with this level of knowledge. And so for so long as you are appropriately cautious on that sort of basis and you know, managing the risks and ensuring you're not giving advice as well, I think that will be fine. The safest course, of course, will be to speak with your employer, and I leave it in your hands. It's a matter for you as to whether you engage the high risk way or the low risk way. Okay, so if I'm trying to get these referrals from trusted advisors, what am I actually doing? And we might run through this, and I'm conscious of trying to leave some time for some more questions. So I might run through this a little quickly, but essentially I use an approach that's referred to as pillar marketing, where you might take one central idea or one pillar and use that central idea as the basis for spinning off other bits of content. Now, as some people might know, and as some people have generously said in their question and comments, my pillar is sort of recent court decisions, and generally decisions of the New South Wales Supreme Court and the New South Wales Court of Appeal. And the reason this is a good pillar to choose, and I give myself that compliment and I accept that compliment I've given myself very happily, is because I don't need to sit around waiting for a bolt of inspiration. All I need to do is hop onto Jade Barnett and to be like, yeah, okay, what's the most recent decision on section 232? Click, 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 refresh. I don't need to sit around to go, what am I going to write about this week? Or what am I going to talk about this week? And so if you are thinking about embarking on a project like this, I'd encourage you to select a pillar that is sort of endless, hopefully, because the moment there stop being decisions handed down in my area, it's the moment I'm out of a job anyway. So I feel reasonably comfortable going ahead on that basis. So we've got this pillar, right, this case. And what you should do, I say, yeah, I'm not big on shoulds. What you quote should do if you're planning to adopt this approach, and what I do is I take this pillar, one of these decisions, and I spin them off into content in the form of written content, video content, and audio content. And so the broad theme is that every time I have a pillar that I've chosen, I'm going to squeeze as much value from that pillar as I possibly can. So how do we do it? One of the places I make use of is LinkedIn, which is the joke I enjoy is that it's like Facebook, but for even older people. Some of you will be on LinkedIn already. And there's a focus on LinkedIn, it has been for the last 4 or 5 years, on publishing and engagement. And the way I make use of LinkedIn, I'll let you know about by zooming out and talking about this phase first. So what do I do to my pillar? What do I do to my Court of Appeal decision or my Supreme Court decision? How do I go about taking that one pillar and spinning off different pieces of content from it? Well, what I do firstly is I make a written LinkedIn status post, right? So as I'm reading the judgment, yep, typing away, then making a note, yep, that's interesting, click, go back to the previous paragraph, yep, come out, yep, click, great. And so I end up with a nice piece of writing. And that for my pillar is one piece of content. Great, got one pillar, one piece of content. But the advantage of a pillar marketing project is that you can take your one pillar and spin off a lot more than just one piece of content. So what I do is I walk down to a local coffee shop or sometimes my home office. I grab a cup of coffee, set up a camera and a tripod, and I attempt to verbally deliver essentially that case again. Hi there, there was a plaintiff, there was a defendant, the plaintiff won, there was a cost order. And so I'm recording this video file as I'm sitting there in the cafe, recording away, looking down into my phone. And as I record, I then put my head down once I've completed the case note, lift it back up, and I say, hello there, I just recorded a case note. It was all about blah. Then I put my head down again, I lift it back up again, and I go, hey, do you know what's funny about partnership disputes? You got to do your bip, your bop, and your boop. And in that one session, that one trip to the coffee shop, which might have taken us 15 minutes, got an audio, got a video file that has a big long case note, and has those two other little snippets there that are pieces of content I'm going to discuss after I've responded to this question. Do you get judgments sent to you by the Supreme Court, or do you have to find them? Great question, Nathaniel. I have to find them, but it's very, very easy. So there are websites that are updated very, very regularly. I'm not sent them. I appreciate the question. So there we are. We've got one piece of written LinkedIn content. We've gone to this cafe and we've left with this video file that has a case note that, let's say, is 5 minutes long and 2 1-minute little snippets. And so what are we going to do? We're going to go to LinkedIn. Remember, on LinkedIn, we've already published our one written post. We're going to post our one long case note. We're going to post our little snippet that says, hi there, I've recorded something. We're going to post our other snippet that says, hi there, partnership law is crazy. And so out of our one pillar, we haven't left with one piece of content. We've left with 4. And that's just the start, because what we're also going to do, gosh, this is in a bad order. We're also going to do that same thing on Facebook. We're going to go to Facebook and we're going to have the long case note and the little previews. And so that's going to total 5, 6, 7 pieces of content. And you already know what I'm going to start saying is that on Instagram, we'll have the long case note. So that's 8 pieces of content from that same pillar. On podcasts, we're going to take the audio from that long case note, click, save as audio only, using a service called Anchor, just spelled like the thing you throw off the side of a boat. We're going to go to Anchor and we're going to upload that audio. That's going to go into 9 or 10 podcast locations. So if we think back to what we've got this one pillar, this one decision with all those podcast locations. We're now up to 16 or 17 pieces of content. And we're also going to upload the long form VIDEs. My gosh, you guys must have seen more typos in this than I've caught, but VIDEs is disappointing. We're going to upload the long form VIDE onto YouTube, and that as well is going to assist us. So what's that? That's the 18th piece of content. We're also going to, while the case is fresh in our mind, record a less than 3-minute version of the case note, just talking down to our phone. What's that? That's 19. What else have we got? Twitter, we might just post up a link to the YouTube channel where we've recorded it. And so that's 20. And so what we have, if we work back here, is we have the pillar approach that I would commend to you, where we've chosen and taken our pillar and we've squeezed as much as we can from our pillar, such that rather than having one pillar, one piece of content, which is, I say with respect, a traditional way of doing things, we have one pillar and 21, 22, 23 pieces of content. That's what I do. And after I answer these questions, we're going to get to what you might like to do. And I think we're looking good for an early mark. Susan, you can give me a kick if I'm going too slow or too fast. Eleni Soromokis asks, when starting to post and build these different profiles to post this content, would you recommend to make a separate Instagram or Facebook account for professional things and to keep the personal? Well, Eleni, my view is it's up to you. My additional view is if you were to press me, I'd probably have a separate professional account. And that is for a number of reasons. One of them is your personal account has personal stuff from before you decided to turn it to a social media marketing engine. The second reason is you can start curating it from day one as a legal content destination, rather than going, oh, by the way, team, I know you loved my yoga poses, but we're now changing this into being all about the tax regime in, pursuant to New South Wales legislation and what the OSR likes to do. So you avoid that jarring position of your friends and family going, oh, okay, what are we doing now? And I just think it's probably easier on you, frankly. So I'd encourage you to treat it as your own issue and for me to pass the buck. But if I can't pass the buck, make them separate. Bernadette, how do you have time to read cases, see clients, prepare and attend court, and do all your other errands as a lawyer when you're also doing this? Bernadette, this is not a helpful comment I'm going to make, and I apologise. You just do. And part of the way I just do is I understand that as a director or a partner of a law firm, a big part of it is bringing in the work. And, bringing in the work can include going off and having coffees or going to golf days or, helping getting, mail outs printed or going to conferences in irritating locations overseas or whatever it is. And so that's all irritating, time-consuming work I don't want to do. And so in order for me to avoid doing that time-consuming, irritating marketing work I don't want to do, I try to do a project I do want to do. And so anyone who has a form of marketing that is working well for them, they like more than this, they should do that. This is a form of marketing that I like, that works okay for me. And I just need to make it work in order for me to, progress and maintain my career in the position I've got to. So I'm sorry for the blunt, I just do sort of comment, but, and I realize that I'm sure there'll be mental health lectures in this course and a lot of chat about the demands placed on young lawyers and intermediate lawyers and senior lawyers as well. I'm afraid I don't constructively add to that chat because I'm someone who works reasonably hard and I work reasonably long hours. And I'm afraid as part of that reasonably hard work and those reasonably long hours, I put in time doing this project. Keshav, another question. A common hurdle is the quality. This is interesting. Quality delivery, etc. How worried should we be about, oh, you're very welcome, anonymous attendee. Thank you for that. Thank you. How worried should we be about quality? I made a mistake in the second minute there. I called a director a shareholder. My audio sounds a bit crunchy, I accidentally touched the microphone on my tie, or, oh no, I'm filming with an old iPhone or whatever. These are all completely legitimate concerns, and you should be as worried as you'd like. My view is upload it and do better next time, because once you start getting caught up in the perfectionism of like, oh, let me do one more take, or, let me do this a little bit better, a little bit different, you're already wasting time, is my view. And so my view is you do one and done, and then if you didn't do a good job, oh well, get it next time. That's not an approach for everyone, but if you do have a perfectionist streak, that perfectionist streak is going to be tested if you engage in a process like this. Got some other comments. I love reading judgments. Best way to become an expert. Jenna, great comment. How do you gauge how well your marketing works? Rosemary, that's a great question. Firstly, with patience. It's not going to work overnight. It took about 3 years, 2 or 3 years of doing these things weekly-ish. So that's, 3,000 or 4,000 hours plowed into it. And it's working okay now, which is nice. But that upfront investment is genuine. How do you know if it works? You get inquiries from people who are like, hey, I know you from this, or I Googled you for this issue and your name was the first 4 results. And that's more or less the complete answer. How do you know it works? Because clients come to you rather than anyone else. Because if we're going to be mercantile, are able to maintain a charge out rate that is above your competitors and still bring in work. You're able to do any number of things that you can attribute directly to the project. How do you know? And you mainly know because work is coming to you, but you must, if you're going to engage in a process like this, be extremely patient. It takes a very long time. Then it takes maintenance. Great, thanks, Rosemary. Great, thanks to you. I appreciate that. So as we move into what I suspect is the tail end of the talk, what are my suggestions to you? Well, what's an approach I suggest to you? I say that because of the reasons we discussed earlier about our clients moving online, that you should, and again, I don't love shoulds, as we said before, but you should consider using the internet in building your practice, building your client base, progressing your career. But how? Immediately adopting my all over the internet type approach might be a bit challenging. So I don't necessarily recommend that, tomorrow you start your YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, podcast, whatever else it is, Twitter, whatever else, Clubhouse, whatever, RIP Clubhouse. I presume it's over now. I don't necessarily endorse the idea of you got to do it all right now. What I say is that you choose one pillar and you choose one place. And so you might be a person who loves putting up nice things on Pinterest. And so let's choose your place as Pinterest because it's something you already enjoy. And let's say your pillar is your thoughts on alternative dispute resolution in family law. And so we go, great, let's talk about mediations in that context. That's one pillar, mediations and family law. And your place is Pinterest. And so what you're going to do is you're going to craft a piece of content that is your one pillar and your one place. Then hopefully 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, you're going to choose another pillar and we're going to publish that again just on Pinterest. And so you've got your pillar that you're coming up with every 2 or 3 weeks. Hopefully 2 or 3 weeks if you can manage it. As we said before, this is not a zero time consuming process, but we've got our pillar, we've got our place. And so let's say after 3 months, you're in the rhythm of every so often choosing a pillar and publishing something on Pinterest. And then, a suggestion for a pillar can also be a frequently asked question. That's probably the best way I can go for it. So if you're a conveyancer who always has to tell people all about issue X every time, great. It's a fabulous basis for making a bit of content. And the place could be your favorite online destination. And over time, you add further steps, you add further locations. So let's say after 3 months of that, every time you have a pillar, you go straight onto Pinterest and you do a tweet about it. And so 3 months of that, every time you got a pillar, you do Pinterest and a tweet. After 3 months of that, every time you got a pillar, you do Pinterest, tweet, and you do an Instagram post that essentially is the same as the Pinterest post because you'll be using an image. And so if every 3 months, and again, I'm making up the timing, but hopefully I'm doing it in a way that gives you enough space to sort of gradually add these strings to your bow. After that time, in 2 years, you're going to have your full complement arranged. You're going to have your podcast, your YouTube channel, your TikTok, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your Twitter, Snapchat, I don't care about. Maybe it's more popular than I perceive, but I perceive its popularity is about zero. Clubhouse, very time consuming. I'm not going to go there. Pinterest, pretty time consuming and sort of dense, and I'm not particularly interested. So if you've got the big 6 or 7 covered after about a year of your project, I think that's a good outcome. And leveraging your time. And I'm going to flesh that out after I check the chat and check the Q&A. Where do you source your images from LinkedIn from? Teresa, it appears. Teresa, can I ask you to reflect on that a little longer? Do you mean me personally? Are we LinkedIn buddies? Because if it's my images on LinkedIn, they are mine. I take a photograph with my phone or anything like that. Or if you mean sort of your images, which is to say, if you might get a project started, I'd be grateful if you could help me understand which of those two it is so I can answer. But for my images, I get them from my phone. When I point it somewhere, give them a click. Q&A. Do you believe showing parts of your personal life on social media makes potential clients prefer to see you as more human? Yes, I do. Lisa, is it a good thing? Maybe, right? The reason I say maybe is there are some clients who are going to go, I don't like someone who has an old skateboard deck on the wall of their office. I don't want to work with them. Fine. If someone doesn't like the personality you're showing, then they were not going to like you anyway. And so if in your online project, you are concealing a part of your personality, and you get work from that, you're going to get work from people who don't actually know you that well. And so my suggestion on these sort of points is to, within the realms of being realistic, to be as authentic as you can, so that when I meet you for a coffee, I don't go, oh man, that doesn't look like your photo doesn't look anything like you at all. And you know, you're talking in a way I was not expecting you to talk. And you've obviously crafted this image to remove parts of your life that you want to avoid me having seen. And that's quite a jarring experience. A number of you have had that jarring sort of catfish type experience where you go, look, that's not you at all. Or that's not the little avatar photograph that I thought I was forming a relationship with. So I'd encourage you to be as whole as possible. And you might note that at the start of this, Susan referred to the fact I used to review and make rap music, and the fact that I have a horror movie podcast. They're sort of things that some people would go, oh, bleh, all right, go away. And some people would go, oh, okay, well, that's interesting enough. And remember, our goal is to become known, liked, trusted. So known, that's a numbers game. How far are you going to distribute yourself? Liked, that's a 50-50 game. And I say you increase your chance of being liked by being as authentic as you can. Trusted, that's an expertise point based on the level of experience you have. So what I hope you agree is that taking that personal, open sort of approach is a way to go about things. And if I can conclude on that final comment before I get to small questions, I say that if we're talking about the strategy you might employ, if we're talking about drip, 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 you know, you're getting a pillar, obviously in one place, 3 months later, pillar, 2 places, 3 months later, pillar, 3 places, etc., then I say that the power of that is to leverage your time. And if the only resource we have to throw at building a legal career is time, then I'd encourage you to spend it as wisely and in the most leveraged way as you possibly can. And that, I say, is the power of a strategy like this. And that is the biggest should that I'll hit you with today. And I thank you very much for your time discussing this. And I will turn to some of the questions that have just arrived. Well, some of them that were waiting there as well. That's very generous of you all. Susan, I understand our deadline is 6:30 sharp, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, 6:30. So there's a few questions they're coming in. So that's fantastic. That just shows you've done a good job.
Oh, very, very kind. And if anyone misses out on the question, or if I don't get there, the whole point of this project is I should be pretty easy to find. So if I've done my job on known, you should be able to find me on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter or on YouTube or on TikTok. So hopefully I'm pretty easy to find. And if I'm not, then that means I give bad advice and you can just ignore everything I've said. Vanessa Perry, as a new lawyer, are you saying to build your profile would be a good idea to engage in current events in your field and then use content to engage in conversation with potential employers and clients? Yes, Vanessa. So let's say you are interested in IP. If there are recent developments in copyright or whatever it is, it'd be worth engaging with content about that and potentially sharing content about that. Yes, I think that would be relevant and interesting. Harjit, that's a very generous comment. You're welcome. Daniel, one of the least boring webinars you've watched in a long time. Oh, Daniel, I'll cling to that. And you're very welcome, Melissa. Gosh, what lovely comments. My head might get a bit inflated if I stay in the chat. I might go to the Q&A. Are you interested in starting new projects in the future? Asks one anonymous attendee. No, not especially. I sort of feel like my time is taken up a bit with Spooko and coffee and a case note and being a parent and being a husband and being a lawyer and doing all that kind of stuff as well. I appreciate the question. Jackson asks, do you often make content from cases you've worked on? No, never. There was one decision last year I was involved in that was right in my subject area, and it went very well. And as you can imagine, I was profoundly tempted to say, hey, guess what? But I mentioned it in passing only. And if anyone wants to Google me and celebrate with me on how that all went, good fun. You're welcome to. Vanessa asks, as a new lawyer to build a profit. Vanessa, I think we've dealt with that in the chat, I think. Tao Jiang asks, do you suggest we subscribe to a premium version of LinkedIn? I don't care about premium, Tao. So I've got however much LinkedIn clout numbers that I don't pay attention to. And I've never done a premium account. So I've got no real view on LinkedIn Premium. I don't particularly care about it. It's got no value, obvious to me. and it may have great value for you, but if it does, it's not value I've seen before. But, best of luck. And you're welcome to come stalk me and check out what I'm up to on LinkedIn if you're inclined. Aisha, enjoying this presentation, Aisha. Thank you. I wanted to ask what advice you have for law students seeking a job during law school. Yeah, look, this is the trap. I need to get experience, but to get a job, I have to have experience. It's that challenging position for a lot of law students. I'm afraid that's sort of a numbers game. Aisha, if you ask the right firm at the right time, great, you might get them in. It's worth having a beer with your second cousin who, knows a friend who left, right, and center as a partner at a certain firm. It's worth following people on LinkedIn, giving them a like, giving them a comment, and just sort of forming a relationship with them. And the more of those relationships you're able to build, the more likelihood someone will have a role for you. And it might even be unpaid for a week or 2 weeks. Don't do unpaid for too long. But you'll then be able to say, hey, yeah, I've got some experience in a law firm. Let me just pop into the chat. Oh, lovely comment. Very, very grateful for all these very kind comments. I said I'd stay out of the chat, and I should. You're all very welcome, and I really appreciate the comments. Q&A. Views on SEO, Google Ads for marketing, written content via your website. My views are that my marketing team tells me it's good. I don't do it. I'm not engaged with it here at Chamberlains, at a law firm I'm a director of, but we are told it's good and it's important. So to the extent there is written content being put on your firm website, yeah, good times, get into it. Am I intending to do the bar exam to become a barrister? No, I appreciate the question. The power of being a solicitor is the power to form a firm, and it's one that I enjoy, and I like being in business with other people, and I like having those difficult chats when you're all on a joint thing together trying to run a medium-sized business that's got its little quirks and its little challenges and its little problems. The life of a barrister is slightly lonelier to my way of thinking, and it's not one that appeals to me immediately. There was a time when I was thinking very deeply about pursuing it, and I formed the view then that I was probably not the right personality for it. And I think that was the right view to form, although I'm grateful for the question because there is an implicit compliment that I'm okay at talking about the law. Tao, thanks for the scintillating and stimulating presentation. I'm into it. Tao, you are very welcome, as is everyone in attendance, everyone who's commented. We got another question, we got another chat. Cab rank rule is great for a solicitor and not a barrister. I completely agree with that anonymous attendee. Enjoyed and learned a lot. Saraswati, thanks. I'll do a sales pitch before we go. Team, come and follow me on any of those platforms if you're interested. This is what I'm like. I'm fairly authentic, and that's about all I've got to say before passing on to Susan. Really appreciate all your comments and questions and your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, you can see how fantastic a presentation it was just by all the compliments coming in. That's just absolutely wonderful. So a huge thank you, James, for sharing your insights and your experience. And you just do it in such a kind of a charming and such an approachable, honest way. So thank you again. And I've got no doubt that people will take away lots of great learnings that they can put into practice. Maybe in small steps rather than, as you say, going and doing it across all mediums and platforms at once.
Yes, it's a lot to chew if you take it all on at once, for sure.
Absolutely. So I was just going to say, just don't forget to connect with us and make sure that you're aware of upcoming events and programs. Just very, very quickly, I'll just mention two. The New Law Careers Series is being held by the Centre of Legal Innovation on the 16th and 17th of May, and that's going to be looking at 10 different alternative careers in the new law space. And also the next session that I'm going to be coordinating on the 26th of May is on how to establish an international career in law, and I'll have representatives from different countries, including the UK, Hong Kong and US. So look out for that on the events page. So thank you, everyone, for your attendance, and thank you again, James, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Hey, if you'll have me, I'd be delighted. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
I am going to say goodbye. James, I will give you a call.
Great. All right. Susan, you've got my number there, I
Just
think.
give it to, I've got it. It'll probably be on some of the emails that you sent me.
Ends in 321.
Okay.
Or I'm happy to stay on the call if that's easier.
Yeah,
Or...
all right, that's fine. We're
Yeah.
just still being recorded at the moment.
It's okay.
Yeah, so
I haven't done anything incriminating, I don't think.
You haven't. I'm just seeing that everyone has left.
I think we've got 20 or 19 people, but lovely people tonight. It was very kind and very generous. Of, everyone's asking nice questions and saying nice things.
But
very good
that's just the way you do it as well.
Really? No, yeah, well,
I must say
that's generous.
You did a beautiful job, and it's probably what you love, because you are really giving back and you're helping people so much. And the questions were terrific.
Great questions. Yeah,
like, honestly, the quality of those questions was phenomenal.
Very high quality.
I've got a listing of those, so I think they would be probably quite good to share as well. But yeah, like, good questions.
Nice.
So I think
we've got 13 friends. I'm happy to speak in front of them if like, we're not going to say anything. What are we going to say? We're going to say mean stuff.
No, I was just going to say thank you again.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, no.
And I'm sure you want to get back to living your life and get back home and be with your family.
Yeah, a little bit more work to do. So it'll be a big, it'll be a reasonably big night of excitement in the office tonight, but it's something that'll be good. Well, Susan, thanks for thinking of me and really enjoy the chance to chat. And if it goes okay, and if you want me back for stuff in future, very, very open to that, very relaxed.
I think you're going to regret that, James.
Oh, prove me wrong. So it sounds good. No, I'll get out of your way.
That
really
was
appreciate
phenomenal.
it.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Very kind. Bye.
See you.